So, Phatic Mutual Logorrhea. Phatic is when you just make a sound and it's meant to show that you're being friendly or whatever. No, it's what animals do. They growl, they hiss, they purr. Why do humans talk to each other and not say anything? Why do men do that? I suppose you could dismiss the chatter of women, because we know they are more likely to do these things than men. But why do men who have things to do talk like this to each other? Is it because they're just house husbands, bored at home, having their coffee mornings? I imagine so. They would certainly be men not particularly interested in having a rational and honest discussion about anything at all. And that's why they go through the motions of apparently discussing something important, using long words, but in fact say nothing at all. And then there are these people who post in the chat and say nothing at all. It's a phenomenon, a social phenomenon. Say nothing at all. And then there are a social phenomenon or a sense of hysteria, mental illness, psychosis, neurosis, something of that nature. Why would all these men who, well, they've gone to college, they're graduates, and they say nothing at all? Perhaps they're not allowed to say anything to offend the host. But then why don't they start off their own channels? Probably because they have nothing much to say and they're easily led and they want to be told what to do, and when they need direction, they will be nannied and being infantilized, pathetic, stupid, afraid to say what they mean. They submit. They submit to this sort of thing. And really, it's just taking turns to speak. It's nothing resembling a conversation, God forbid. It might seem like a conversation if you don't understand English, but you will see that what these men say in response to each other is unrelated to what the other person has said. And sometimes when somebody actually says something interesting, the topic is moved swiftly on. But less about these pitiable, neurotic, frightened men. We can talk about what I've been trying to do. I will be speaking later about the nature and purpose of religion with someone who presumably is interested in these things, and it's just him arriving because I guess he wants to say a few words about it. It's not a whole flock of buffoons afraid to say what they mean, but taking turns to say it. All the while being nannied, told what the rules are, told not to break them. and talking about tacos or some little in-joke, the way you would expect children and teenagers to do. What binds them, I suppose? Birds of a feather flock together. They would be Christian or post-Christian. But the ones who are most enthusiastically Christian would be the ones who have acquired a list of words that are vaguely to do with philosophy, talking about Jung as if he were anything to do with Jesus. It's astounding, really. So Jung was a psychologist who knew Freud and quarrelled with him. Freud basically said everything was about sex, and if people were acting in a neurotic way, it's because they're sexually frustrated or had some kind of childhood trauma when perhaps they were sexually abused or had some sexual thoughts that they feel as adults guilty about. It may be something to do with their Oedipus or Electra complex, something like that. More recently, these ideas have been discredited as being Jewish or too, what's the word? Well, he was saying that it's basically about sex. But perhaps it is. I used to pour scorn on the idea, thinking it can't all be about sex. But the way these men behave, I think we could be forgiven for coming to the conclusion that it is, after all, to do with sex. So why are these men that I'm thinking of so terrified of actually saying anything that might be understood or acted on? I have proposed earlier that it must be something to do with their great fear of their wives. Of course, I can't prove it. Somebody had a brilliant idea that he acknowledged to be from his wife, and this was the wives of the TLC starting YouTube channels of their own and showing the men what's what and who's who. And this is such a brilliant idea. I do already enthusiastically support it. In fact, I am trying to tell people to look forward to it. And then we can have this dialogue going, this genuine dialogue going about where we think we're going and where we don't want to end up crashing and burning at. But it's very difficult dealing with all these neurotic men who don't really want to have a conversation. They just want to hide and disengage and complain that you're not playing according to their rules and they don't want to hear it again. I don't think it's something that I do regularly. I don't just say the same thing again and again and again with no context. I usually ensure that what I say has some bearing on what went on previously. But I see that the tactics of avoidance is now getting pretty sharp. They joked about kryptonite and their kryptonite to me, to even avoid being in a situation where they might have to tie me out or remove me, is to never discuss anything that I might want to post about or participate in. And the code word is root beer. So if they talk about something that is nothing to do with religion and nothing to do with politics and nothing to do with philosophy, and keep doing it, then I suppose they will have successfully found their kryptonite, and I would have to go elsewhere. But really, I'm only looking for a dialogue. It seems not many of them are up to it, without all their mute buttons and kick buttons and accusation buttons. But that's okay. I'll find a new way. But what do these men fear so much? What is their greatest horror? In a way, I sympathise, because you don't want to be told that your religion has failed. And not only do you not want to be told that your religion has failed, you don't want to be told that it has been failing since the wars of the Reformation about 500 years ago. And you certainly don't want to be told that nobody told you, because I guess it's fundamentally shameful to have nobody to care enough about you or your country or your society than little old me. It seems I am the only person who cares enough to issue these warnings. Everyone else is happy to ignore the problem. And again, we must wonder, what is wrong with these men? Don't they care? These men have children. They've gone to college. They got married. They have children. But they don't care. They don't care what's going to happen to their country. Perhaps they think that Christian nationalism will save them. Christian nationalism, which is upgraded white nationalism, is at the most a way of tricking them into giving up their First Amendment rights by encouraging them to be racist and Islamophobic and anti-Semitic. You can see it in the algorithms. People are being slowly moved towards anti-feminism, more racism, but at the moment it's about the Jews. So there is a danger. Well, to heritage Americans and their First Amendment, because what the corrupt bargain is this. The corrupt bargain is to make them think that by pretending to be Christian, they can become a Christian republic and then be able to make all those Jews and Muslims and non-whites second-class citizens, or worse. That's a plan. But there is an alternative, I suppose. They're trying to discredit Trump, maybe flush out his supporters, make them think it's safe to say all the things they've been longing to say, and then come and get them after they've posted all their anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, racist crap online. But I suppose the making of sounds is it's important for humans. We sigh, we cry, we groan, we moan. And I suppose if we know a few words, we like to say them to express our opinions and our emotions. And if we have a proposal, we would be making them and talking about them. But there is so much camouflage. There is so much deception. There are streams with a title. I suppose I sometimes do that. I say something in a title and then discover later that I don't quite stick to the subject, but then I change it. I have enough respect for my own streams to make the title be in harmony with the contents. But there are people I've noticed who pretend to be discussing something important but don't really say it. What I've noticed that what these young Christians do is they have these 2-hour, 3-hour streams, and it's all nonsense, but they nod along to each other, and then later they might say something like Nick Fuentes, and then they witter on nonsensically to each other, and then a bit later on they might say Christian nationalism, and this is what I've noticed. This is their tentative way of showing that they might find Christian nationalism attractive. So this is obviously a new phenomenon. I guess they're testing the waters. They're dipping their heritage American toes into the waters of political and religious discourse. In the meantime, they will be speaking gibberish to each other and not really caring if they make sense or not, or that they don't have a takeaway point. But you shouldn't just ignore these streams. If you look a little closer, you might find that a lot of information is contained in the live chat, especially if I'm there. And you might find it more fun and entertaining to participate in the chat. Now, what I've noticed is the others have been talking about being not seeing each other's notifications, as if somebody was interfering with their communications or trying to separate them. Like a teacher separating two school children who get each other up to no good, I suppose. But if you're just having a dialogue with someone, then it would actually be more constructive. I find that all these sort of hangouts, these group streams, tend not to say anything much, but dialogues are more revealing in that eventually people will get bored spouting the same old platitudes and finally get down to the nitty-gritty. But if you have a big group of people, then some people just disengage and do something else, and others just spout banal comments of no interest at all. But if you have a dialogue, then at least you're getting somewhere. But I know that there are many of them refuse to engage with me, and they block me, and they They find it hard. Now, what was what? I suppose I should tell you, read to you what one of them has said. So this was in response to somebody saying how wonderful O.G. Rose is. And he talks about the Gödel theorem. I actually don't know what he's getting at, but the others who are nodding along apparently sagaciously do, and they praise him, though even when I'm paying attention, I just don't see what he's getting at, other than telling the others to remain Christian. So I asked Ethan, what is the point of the Gödel point? The Gödel point, I should say. So I said, what is the point? Could you explain? And Ethan said, not interested in explaining, and in every interaction I've had with you, you don't actually listen to what I say and then respond with endless self-promotion or some remix of patriarchy plus no-fault divorce plus punishment equals secular Quranism. You have a pattern of creating pseudonyms and spamming comment sections with endless self-promotion. It is for this reason that I won't be responding to you anymore. The days are too short. Now, why can't I promote my solutions of patriarchy, the abolition of no-fault divorce, and corporal punishment for unmarried parents? What's wrong with that? Wouldn't it work to restore moral order through the patriarchy again? But I suppose he thinks it's too dangerous. Well, I've come to the end of this short little stream. I will be streaming later at 7 with Tharium, who was in the Anglo gang. It might be revived, I don't know. We have in common our views on American foreign policy, and this might be a fruitful field of discussion. Thank you all for coming.